Megan Harper always believed her life was simple, happy, and perfect, with her devoted husband, Jason, and their bright, lively daughter, Lily, filling every corner of their suburban Ohio home with warmth and laughter. Their mornings were calm, filled with the smell of coffee and toast, the soft hum of conversation, and the routine comfort of shared family moments, while weekends brought small adventures, movie nights, and quiet strolls in the park. But over the past few weeks, Megan had begun noticing things that unsettled her, tiny cracks in her seemingly flawless world that she tried to ignore at first, telling herself she was overthinking. Jason had started coming home later from work, often without explanation, carrying a distracted look in his eyes that made her stomach twist with unease, and Lily had grown more secretive, sometimes disappearing into her room for long stretches, murmuring to herself in ways that made Megan feel both curious and concerned. One evening, Megan had returned home earlier than expected, intending to surprise Jason with dinner, hoping to catch a rare quiet moment together, but as she stepped into the hallway, the sound of laughter drifted through the open living room door, warm and intimate in a way that immediately made her pause. It was Jason's voice, soft and gentle, mingling with Lily's higher-pitched laughter, and although she knew laughter itself was harmless, the tone carried an unusual closeness that made her heart skip and her mind race. Megan's curiosity overcame caution, and she tiptoed toward the living room, careful not to make a sound, gripping the grocery bags with white-knuckled hands as she peeked around the corner. What she saw made her catch her breath, Jason and Lily sitting side by side on the couch, closer than usual, heads bent together as if sharing a secret that belonged only to them, Jason brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face while she leaned in, resting her head gently on his shoulder, an action so tender that Megan didn't even know how to interpret it. It was not sexual, but it carried a weight of intimacy she had never imagined between father and daughter, and her chest tightened with confusion and fear. She froze, holding her breath as she tried to understand what this moment meant, torn between stepping back quietly or confronting them, and in that instant, every memory of family meals, bedtime stories, and shared smiles seemed to blur with uncertainty. Megan realized her heart was pounding not from shock alone, but from the strange, almost painful awareness that something in her family had shifted, something subtle yet undeniable, that she could feel but could not yet name. She remembered the small things, the lingering glances, the way Jason seemed to pause when Lily spoke, the rare moments of private laughter in corners of the house, and they all now came together in a pattern she couldn't ignore. Megan slowly backed away, her mind racing through every possibility, questioning her own perceptions while the images of Jason's hand gently touching Lily's cheek, the softness in her daughter's expression, and the closeness they shared replayed in her mind like a haunting loop she could not escape. She felt a sharp sting of jealousy, an unfamiliar surge of protectiveness, and an overwhelming sense of fear for the bond that had always seemed so natural, now transformed into something puzzling, intense, and almost forbidden in the way it captured her attention. Megan's thoughts spiraled. Was this simply fatherly care taken to an extreme, or had she been blind to an emotional intimacy that had grown beyond what she understood? Her hands trembled as she set the grocery bags down on the counter, trying to steady herself, realizing that the act of witnessing this moment had broken the illusion of control she had always believed she had over her home, her family, and the love she shared with them both. She wanted to confront them, to demand answers, yet a part of her feared that any words might shatter something delicate, something she didn't yet understand but instinctively knew was important. Megan wondered how she had missed the signs for so long, the secretive phone conversations between Jason and Lily, the way Lily's laughter sometimes carried a grown-up inflection of admiration that Megan found unsettling, the small but frequent touches and lingering embraces that seemed innocent at first but now felt layered with unspoken emotion. She realized she had been living in a carefully curated illusion of family harmony, ignoring the subtle signals of change, and now she was forced to confront the reality that emotions are not always simple, that love can take forms she wasn't prepared for, and that misunderstanding could easily breed fear and resentment if left unchecked. Megan's mind raced with questions about boundaries, trust, and the nature of emotional intimacy. Was this closeness dangerous, or simply misunderstood? Was she overreacting, letting her imagination amplify harmless affection, or was there truly a new, complicated dynamic unfolding in her family that demanded careful attention. Every instinct she had as a mother and wife was screaming at her to watch carefully, to understand fully before acting, yet the ache in her chest reminded her that she could not simply ignore what she had seen. She found herself pacing quietly, the memory of Jason's tender gestures and Lily's trusting gaze looping over and over, each repetition twisting her emotions in ways she had never experienced, a strange combination of sorrow, longing, confusion, and protectiveness that left her breathless and uncertain. Megan realized that the household, which once felt predictable and secure, now seemed charged with a new kind of tension, a silent storm of emotions that she had inadvertently stumbled into, and she could feel the weight of unspoken thoughts pressing on her chest, the need to understand battling with the fear of discovering something she might not be ready to face. She thought of all the family moments she had taken for granted, bedtime hugs, school runs, weekend outings, holiday traditions, and quiet nights watching television together, and she understood that all of these seemingly simple routines had been part of a delicate balance, a rhythm that had kept them close, that now felt disrupted by this sudden revelation. Megan realized that the scene she had witnessed, though not physical in nature, carried an intensity that was undeniably real, an emotional closeness that had likely been building over months, possibly years, and it forced her to confront a truth she had never considered, that emotional bonds could be as powerful, as confusing, and as potentially threatening to her own sense of security as anything else. She felt tears prick her eyes, a mixture of fear, sadness, and an unexpected twinge of jealousy that she could not fully name, as she quietly retreated into the kitchen, setting down her groceries as if that small act could anchor her in some sense of normalcy. Her mind raced with possible scenarios, each one more unsettling than the last, imagining the conversations she might have with Jason, the explanations she might demand from Lily, and the difficult path toward understanding that lay ahead, knowing that the answers would not be simple, the emotions would not be easy to untangle, and the family she thought she knew so well might never look the same again. Megan spent the rest of the evening in a state of uneasy vigilance, listening to the muffled sounds of their voices, watching from a distance, and trying to process the intensity of what she had seen, realizing that this was not about betrayal or wrongdoing, but about love, attachment, and the complex, sometimes misunderstood ways in which people connect. She wondered whether her perception of events had been shaped by fear, whether she was projecting insecurities onto a natural father-daughter bond, and yet a small voice inside told her that the closeness she had witnessed went beyond the ordinary, that something had shifted, and that she could not ignore it if she hoped to protect her family and herself. Megan finally went to bed that night with a heavy heart, thoughts of Jason and Lily intertwined with memories of her own love for them, struggling to make sense of the emotions swirling inside her, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions, and the pressing need to confront the delicate truths she had glimpsed, all while trying to preserve the bonds of love and trust that had always defined her family. She drifted off with one clear thought echoing in her mind, that love, in all its forms, could be confusing, overwhelming, and even frightening, but it demanded courage to face honestly, and she knew that the next step she took could shape the course of her family's future forever. The next morning, Megan woke with a heavy heart, the image of Jason and Lily from the previous evening still burning in her mind, and she felt an unusual mix of anxiety and determination as she moved through the kitchen, preparing breakfast with her hands trembling slightly, wondering how to approach the day without letting her fears show, knowing that every glance, every gesture between them could be loaded with meaning she might misinterpret. She noticed Lily sitting unusually close to Jason at the table, whispering something and giggling, and she felt a pang of confusion and jealousy that surprised her, making her question her own feelings as a mother, a wife, and a woman who had believed she understood the boundaries of love within her family, but now found them blurred and fragile. Megan tried to act normal, smiling and making casual conversation, asking about school and homework, but Lily's eyes seemed to dart toward her father in ways that made Megan's stomach twist, and Jason, though polite and attentive, appeared distracted, his hand occasionally brushing Lily's in ways that Megan could not easily interpret, causing a storm of emotions to churn inside her, from fear and insecurity to protectiveness and longing to understand. As the day went on, Megan found herself observing more, noticing little moments she had previously ignored, Jason lingering outside Lily's room when she was reading or practicing music, offering quiet encouragement and listening intently. The way Lily's face would light up when he praised her ideas or accomplishments, and how she sought his guidance more eagerly than she had ever sought hers, all of which made Megan feel both proud and anxious, unsure if she was seeing normal parental love or a deeper, more complicated attachment that was unfolding in ways she had never considered. She recalled the private conversations they shared in whispers, the inside jokes, and the gentle teasing that Megan had always assumed was innocent, but now felt weighted with a new significance, making her feel like an outsider in her own home, watching a closeness that she could not fully reach or control. Megan realized that she could not simply confront Jason without understanding the nuances of their relationship, so she resolved to observe carefully, to pay attention to the subtle cues that might reveal the truth, even as her heart ached with a mix of jealousy, worry, and the fear that her family was changing in ways she could not prevent. Later that afternoon, while Jason was helping Lily with a school project, Megan noticed the intensity in their expressions, the way they leaned toward each other, heads almost touching, sharing ideas and laughter, and she felt a strange ache in her chest, a combination of relief that it was likely innocent and concern that their emotional bond had grown so powerful, almost magnetic, that she felt herself being pushed to the edge of her own comfort zone. She wondered if she had underestimated Jason's dedication as a father, or if Lily had always sought this level of emotional support, and now it had escalated into something that blurred the lines she had believed were clear, leaving her feeling vulnerable, insecure, and unsure how to reclaim her place within the family dynamic without causing tension or hurt. Megan spent the evening trying to create normal family interactions, setting the table for dinner, asking Lily about her day, smiling at Jason, but she could feel the subtle distance forming, the unspoken connection she had witnessed lingering like a shadow over every word and gesture, making her question how to bridge the growing gap without seeming controlling or accusatory. When she finally had a moment alone, Megan reflected on her own emotions, realizing that she was experiencing a storm of conflicting feelings: love for her family, fear of losing intimacy with her husband, worry that her daughter's closeness with him might overshadow their own bond, and guilt for feeling jealous of the very love she wanted to nurture, all of which made her question her understanding of love, family, and trust, and she understood that navigating this delicate situation would require patience, empathy, and honest communication, even if it meant confronting uncomfortable truths about herself and the relationships she cherished. As days turned into weeks, Megan continued to watch, taking mental notes of behaviors and patterns, noticing how Lily would seek Jason's guidance for both trivial and important matters, how she seemed to confide in him with a level of openness that Megan herself sometimes felt excluded from, and how Jason's responses were always patient, attentive, and caring, creating a sense of security for Lily that Megan couldn't deny but also couldn't fully comprehend, leaving her torn between relief and unease. Megan's emotions grew more complex as she realized that the bond between Jason and Lily was not built on manipulation or malice, but on deep emotional need, trust, and reliance, and yet she could not shake the feeling that the intensity of their connection demanded attention, boundaries, and perhaps guidance from her as the mother who had always been the anchor of their family. One evening, when Megan mustered the courage to speak to Jason about her feelings, she found herself fumbling for words, the heaviness of weeks of observation weighing on her, and she said softly, "Jason, I feel like something has changed between us. Between all of us." Jason looked startled, guilt flickering across his face as he replied gently, "Megan, it's nothing like that. Lily is going through a lot right now. She just needs me, and I'm trying to be there for her. That's all." Megan wanted to believe him, yet every fiber of her being urged her to continue asking questions, to probe deeper, to ensure that love and care were not being mistaken for something more, and in the quiet of that night, she lay awake thinking about emotional bonds, the fragility of family trust, and the challenges of understanding the invisible threads that connect people in ways words cannot always capture. She recalled the tender gestures she had witnessed, the quiet moments of laughter and shared secrets, and the intensity of Lily's reliance on her father, realizing that their closeness was a natural, human need for connection, even if it had appeared overwhelming or confusing to her, and that her own emotions, fear, jealousy, protectiveness, were natural responses to the sudden shift in her perception of family intimacy. Megan knew she had to find a balance, to navigate the complexities of love and trust without misinterpreting affection or creating unnecessary conflict, understanding that emotional closeness between parent and child is essential, but that open communication, boundaries, and honesty were equally crucial to maintaining a healthy family dynamic. She resolved to approach the situation with empathy, to see through the lens of care rather than suspicion, and to rebuild her own sense of security within the family, all while observing and supporting both Jason and Lily in a way that preserved love, trust, and understanding, acknowledging that misperceptions and misunderstandings can easily create tension if left unaddressed, and that the strength of her family would rely on patience, compassion, and the courage to confront uncomfortable emotions with clarity and calmness. The days continued with subtle observations, quiet interventions, and gentle guidance, as Megan learned to navigate the intricate emotional landscape between her husband and daughter, balancing her role as a wife, mother, and observer, and realizing that love takes many forms, that emotional bonds can sometimes appear confusing, and that understanding, patience, and empathy are the tools that keep families strong even in moments of doubt, tension, and uncertainty. As Megan lay in bed each night, reflecting on the day's interactions, she felt the weight of both relief and apprehension, knowing that the journey ahead required vigilance, sensitivity, and the courage to address difficult truths with honesty, and she understood that the emotional closeness she had once feared could become a source of strength and healing if approached with love, care, and understanding, ultimately reinforcing the bonds that made her family resilient, compassionate, and deeply connected in ways she had only begun to appreciate, realizing that the heart of family intimacy lies not in perfection, but in the willingness to see, understand, and nurture one another through every challenge, emotion, and revelation, and that the path forward would demand patience, reflection, and unwavering commitment to love in its purest, most human form. Weeks passed, and Megan found herself caught in a whirlwind of emotions she could neither control nor fully understand. The memory of Jason and Lily's closeness replaying in her mind every day like a quiet storm, making ordinary moments feel heavier, charged with unspoken tension, and she realized that observing them from a distance was no longer enough. She needed clarity, a way to understand the depth of their bond without letting fear or jealousy cloud her judgment. Each morning, Megan noticed subtle changes in Lily. Her laughter was lighter around Jason, her eyes brightened when he entered the room, and she leaned on him for advice and comfort in ways that made Megan's heart tighten with both tenderness and concern, because while she recognized the innocence of their connection, the intensity of Lily's reliance on her father was undeniable, and Megan felt a strange mix of pride in Jason's devotion as a parent and anxiety that the emotional closeness might overshadow her own role in their lives. Megan tried to maintain normal routines, preparing breakfast, helping with schoolwork, and engaging in family activities, but she could not ignore the frequent private conversations, the hushed tones, and the shared jokes that seemed to exist in a world she had no access to, leaving her feeling like an outsider despite living under the same roof. One afternoon, Megan discovered a letter that Lily had left on the kitchen counter, addressed to Jason, and although her instincts warned her not to read it, curiosity and the desperate need to understand pushed her forward, and as she unfolded the page, she read words that revealed the depth of Lily's emotional reliance on her father, expressions of fear, longing for reassurance, and gratitude for his guidance and support, all of which illuminated the intensity of their bond and forced Megan to confront a reality she had been avoiding, that the connection she had perceived as potentially threatening was rooted in love, trust, and the need for security, and not in betrayal or manipulation. Megan's chest tightened as she realized that Jason's attentiveness and patience were not signs of wrongdoing, but of a father striving to meet the emotional needs of his child, and yet the letter also made her painfully aware of her own feelings of inadequacy, jealousy, and fear that she might be losing her place in the heart of her daughter and in the shared intimacy she had once felt with her husband, emotions that left her restless and contemplative late into the night. She thought about all the times she had dismissed the closeness between Jason and Lily as normal, imagining that it was nothing to worry about, and she now understood that she had underestimated the complexity of emotional bonds, how they could grow quietly, intensely, and invisibly, shaping relationships in ways that could be both beautiful and unsettling, requiring careful navigation to avoid misunderstanding and hurt. Determined to act with clarity rather than fear, Megan decided to confront the situation thoughtfully, acknowledging her emotions while striving to understand the needs of both Jason and Lily, and she approached Jason one evening with a trembling voice, trying to convey her concerns without accusation, saying, "Jason, I saw the way you and Lily are together, and I'm scared I don't understand it fully. I want to know, honestly, what's happening between you two." Jason looked at her with a mix of guilt and reassurance, taking her hand gently, explaining that Lily's trust in him had grown naturally because she felt vulnerable and needed guidance, that his actions were motivated entirely by care, and that Megan's role as a mother and partner was irreplaceable, emphasizing that their love for her had never diminished. As Megan listened, relief mingled with lingering doubt, and she realized that her fear had been fueled by misunderstanding, by the intensity of observing moments without context, and by the human tendency to overthink relationships when emotions run high, and she felt a shift in perspective, an understanding that emotional intimacy is nuanced, sometimes appearing confusing, but ultimately grounded in care, protection, and affection rather than deceit. Over the next days, Megan focused on reconnecting, observing with empathy rather than suspicion, engaging with Lily through shared interests, small conversations, and quiet attentiveness, making space for Jason's guidance while reaffirming her presence as both a mother and partner, and slowly, she noticed changes, the walls of tension began to soften, Lily became more open with her, and Jason's eyes reflected reassurance and love rather than distraction or guilt. Megan also realized that her own emotional growth was critical, acknowledging the jealousy, fear, and insecurity that had surfaced, and using them as opportunities to strengthen her relationship with both her daughter and her husband, understanding that love, when threatened by misunderstanding, can create pain but also offers the chance for deeper connection, empathy, and mutual respect. One quiet evening, the three of them sat together after dinner, talking, laughing, and sharing small stories of their day, and Megan felt a subtle but profound shift, a sense of balance returning, a recognition that emotional bonds are complex, that misunderstandings are natural, and that open communication and patience are essential for maintaining trust and love within a family. She reflected on the letter she had read, the moments she had witnessed, and the fears that had haunted her, realizing that the intensity of Jason and Lily's bond was not a threat but a reflection of the depth of human connection, and she committed to supporting it while maintaining her own role with confidence, grace, and understanding. Megan understood that families are not perfect, that love is rarely simple, and that clarity often requires courage, honesty, and empathy, and she felt a renewed determination to foster a home where emotional needs are met openly, boundaries are respected, and love in all its forms is acknowledged and nurtured, recognizing that this awareness would allow her family to grow stronger, closer, and more resilient in the face of misunderstandings and fears. She also began to see the beauty in human vulnerability, the power of trust, and the importance of nurturing relationships in ways that honor each person's emotional needs, realizing that emotional intimacy is a gift when handled with care, not a source of fear, and that by choosing understanding over judgment, she could rebuild her sense of security, confidence, and love within her family. By the end of Part 3, Megan had taken significant steps toward healing, creating an environment of openness and compassion, seeing Jason's unwavering support for Lily as a strength rather than a threat, and embracing her own emotions with honesty and reflection, understanding that love, care, and emotional connection are complex and layered, but when approached with empathy and patience, they can transform confusion, fear, and doubt into understanding, reassurance, and a deeper, more meaningful bond among family members, allowing them to face the challenges of growing. Changing relationships together, stronger and more united than ever before, ready to navigate the next chapter of their lives with courage, trust, and love. Megan Harper woke that morning with a renewed sense of purpose, carrying the weight of weeks filled with worry, doubt, and sleepless nights, yet determined to approach her family with honesty, compassion, and clarity, knowing that the delicate bonds she had observed between Jason and Lily could either be nurtured into deeper love or misunderstood into lasting tension if she did not act wisely, and she spent the early hours reflecting on her own emotions, her fears, and the moments that had caused her heart to ache, realizing that the intensity she had witnessed was rooted in care, guidance, and emotional connection, and that misunderstanding it had caused more pain than any wrongdoing ever could, which fueled her resolve to face the situation head-on with courage and empathy. That afternoon, Megan chose a quiet moment when Jason and Lily were sitting together in the living room, softly laughing over a school project, and she gently interrupted, her voice calm but firm, saying, "I want to talk to both of you. I've been feeling confused about our family lately, and I need to understand what's really happening, honestly and openly." And she watched as Jason's eyes softened, Lily's gaze flickered with curiosity and a hint of worry, and the room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the conversation that could change the course of their family dynamic. Megan took a deep breath, continuing carefully, "I know there's a lot of love here, and I can see the closeness you share, Jason, and Lily. I know you need him, but I want us to be clear about our roles and feelings so we can keep trust, love, and respect in our home," speaking with a mixture of vulnerability and strength that made both Jason and Lily listen intently, feeling the honesty in her words and the care behind them, and Megan realized that this moment, though tense, was necessary, a step toward understanding, healing, and reinforcing the bonds that had been shaken by fear and uncertainty. Jason reached out and took Megan's hand, his expression full of reassurance, saying, "Megan, I promise you, everything between Lily and me has always been about care and guidance. I would never let anything harm the love we share as a family, and you are irreplaceable as my wife and the center of our home." And Megan felt a wave of relief wash over her, tears welling up as she understood the truth in his voice, the sincerity in his tone, and the depth of his commitment, realizing that the fear she had carried for weeks had been magnified by misunderstanding and observation without context, and now clarity began to replace the anxiety that had clouded her mind. Lily, sensing the emotion in the room, leaned forward and hugged Megan tightly, her voice trembling as she said, "Mom, I'm sorry if I made you feel left out. I needed Dad, and I didn't know how else to handle everything I was feeling." And Megan hugged her back, feeling the vulnerability and honesty that only a child could express, understanding that Lily's reliance on her father was a natural extension of trust and emotional support, not a betrayal of her mother, and that by acknowledging these feelings openly, they could all move forward together, stronger and more connected. Over the following days, Megan devoted herself to rebuilding her emotional connection with Lily, spending time listening to her thoughts, sharing activities, and providing guidance while respecting the bond Lily had with Jason, creating a balance that reinforced love, trust, and emotional security for both daughter and husband. And slowly, she noticed subtle but significant changes. The laughter she shared with Lily returned to its full warmth, the tension that had hovered in the house began to dissipate, and Jason's attention, while still deeply supportive of Lily, became more inclusive, a reflection of shared love and understanding that Megan could finally feel without fear or jealousy. Megan also reflected on her own growth, recognizing that the journey through uncertainty, observation, and emotional turbulence had strengthened her ability to empathize, to communicate clearly, and to embrace the complex layers of love within her family, understanding that emotional bonds are multifaceted, sometimes misunderstood, and that they require patience, honesty, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths in order to maintain harmony and connection. She realized that the home she had feared might be fractured was instead becoming a place of renewed trust, where each family member's emotional needs were acknowledged, understood, and respected, and where love, though complicated, was resilient, adaptive, and capable of surviving misunderstanding when met with openness and compassion. One evening, as the sun set over their quiet neighborhood, Megan observed Jason helping Lily with her school project while she prepared a small snack, and she felt a quiet pride and deep relief, knowing that the closeness she had once feared was healthy, grounded in emotional security, and that her presence, support, and love were equally vital, creating a harmonious balance that strengthened the bonds they all shared. The family began to establish new routines that fostered connection, with Megan spending quality time with Lily, engaging in long conversations about school, friends, and dreams, while Jason remained a supportive and guiding presence, ensuring that Lily felt safe, understood, and loved from both parental figures, and Megan found her heart growing lighter with each interaction, the shadows of doubt and fear replaced by gratitude, understanding, and renewed affection. Megan also worked on her relationship with Jason, appreciating the patience and care he had shown throughout the period of uncertainty, recognizing that emotional clarity requires trust, communication, and empathy, and that his commitment to their family's well-being was unwavering, which allowed her to rebuild confidence in their marriage, feeling closer to him than she had in months, strengthened by honesty and the willingness to confront difficult feelings together. Through conversations, shared activities, and mutual respect, Megan began to understand that emotional intimacy comes in many forms, and that the depth of Jason and Lily's connection was not a threat, but an opportunity to witness the strength of love, trust, and vulnerability, and she learned to embrace it, guiding it with understanding rather than fear, and allowing it to coexist with her own maternal love and marital bond. Megan's reflections led her to a deeper appreciation of human emotion, the complexities of family relationships, and the power of communication, realizing that misunderstandings often arise from assumptions rather than facts, and that facing emotions openly can transform anxiety and doubt into empathy, harmony, and renewed closeness, strengthening the family as a whole. The weeks that followed were filled with moments of quiet triumph, shared dinners with laughter that no longer felt tense, bedtime conversations that included all three of them equally, and the subtle understanding that while emotional bonds between parent and child are natural and essential, a mother's love remains irreplaceable, and a father's guidance is a gift, with Megan finding peace in her own role, confident in the knowledge that she was deeply loved and integral to the family unit. Megan also noticed that the emotional turbulence she had experienced had transformed her own perspective on love, empathy, and patience, teaching her that fear often clouds judgment, that jealousy is natural but manageable, and that confronting emotions openly rather than suppressing them allows relationships to heal and grow, creating an environment where trust is strengthened, and every family member feels seen, valued, and emotionally secure. By the end of this period, Megan, Jason, and Lily had navigated the storm together, emerging more connected, empathetic, and understanding, having built a foundation based on communication, honesty, and unconditional love. And Megan felt a profound sense of relief, joy, and hope as she watched her daughter and husband interact with warmth, laughter, and mutual respect, realizing that the fears that had once threatened to tear her family apart had instead been transformed into opportunities for growth, understanding, and renewed intimacy, and that the lessons learned would guide them through future challenges, ensuring that love remained at the center of their home, resilient, patient, and deeply rooted in the bonds they shared. The house that had once seemed fragile now felt alive with trust, laughter, and affection, Megan's heart full as she recognized that emotional closeness, when nurtured with honesty, empathy, and patience, can overcome misunderstanding, jealousy, and fear, and that her family, tested by uncertainty, had discovered a new strength, a new appreciation for one another, and a deeper love that promised to carry them forward, united, resilient, and emotionally whole, ready to embrace the future together with compassion, care, and unwavering connection.